Hi, I'm Nicholas Walwork, and I'm going to talk to you today and give you some planning tips on larger scale developments. Now, I'm stood here behind one of my client sites that I'm running the site with them, which is a 30,000 square foot office to residential scheme. We're building 44 apartments, very high-end spec apartments, and we're actually wrapping the building. You can see maybe just in the background some sample wraps that came in this week, and within a 3-week period, I think 3 to 4 week period, this entire building is going to be wrapped. Hugely exciting. If you'd like lots of tips on development and construction and property strategies, property investment strategies, please do subscribe. You know, we really value you guys following us and giving us your comments, joining us on the journey and telling us what you guys are up to. I'm hugely interested in my community to see what you guys are up to and how I can help you more. And, you know, put in some ideas of videos that you'd like to see along the way, and I'll try and post those. So today, in terms of planning tips, the first place you start with planning is obviously with your planning consultant. When I say obviously, not necessarily obvious to anyone, a lot of people use their architects, and depending on how good the architect is and what their experience is, that may or may not be suitable enough for a larger scale project. One like this certainly needs a dedicated planning consultant, someone that's possibly got a small team or a team of people in their business that can deal with the different facets of planning. You have all sorts of detail and depth to planning process. It's not just a case of I want 44 flats and here's my layouts. You have to do an awful lot more than that. You know, things like the vents on the side of the building will need a separate fenestration application. The parking and landscaping will possibly need a separate application. And it's, you know, on a bigger scale project, it's important to break down the overall planning process into several applications, and that way you can narrow the issues for the council to decide upon, and you're more likely to get various elements through, and you can sort of fight your corner and put forward your pitch on what you want in, you know, a number of areas. I think on this site we've had at least 3, maybe 4 planning applications. And the detail that goes into those is incredible. You know, I've talked on previous videos about arboriculturalists for the landscaping. You know, we've got highways, things to consider. So we've got highways reports, contamination reports, there's flood risk issues, there's movements in and out of the site, there's the amount of parking, the amount of people living on site and how that affects things like bike and bin stores all have to be agreed. And they're usually conditioned in planning, so that you have to approve the look and feel of that bike and bin store, for example, to check that it kind of blends into the area. It's not some ugly big plastic horrible box on the corner of the site that will disrupt the area. And we're in a lovely area here, actually. It's all tree lined around this building. We're on the main road in a nice village location here in Hampshire. And with all of that, the council want to maintain the look of their area, and that's quite understandable. So always start with a dedicated planning consultant if you're scaling up your developments, getting into something a bit bigger. Even something with, you know, a handful of flats in can trip an average architect up. Now, you might get a good architect, but don't rely on them for bigger stuff. You know, it's a full-time job being an architect on a big site like this. You know, they are one of the better paid consultants in your consultant budget, and you should probably budget for somewhere between 10 to 13% of your overall construction budget on your consultants. And that kind of goes to show the amount of work these guys do in the site. You know, that's everyone from, you know, I've just mentioned all the highways consultants, drainage, all of those reports you have to get done can form quite a bigger part. And, you know, planning on a bigger site is even more important than on a smaller site, because if something goes wrong, you know, you've got a much bigger budget, a much bigger job that, you know, a couple of week delay on something here can have a huge knock-on effect to trades coming in later. It can really affect the program of your works. So first major tip is really get a dedicated planning consultant. That's really, really key. And then going on to the planners, you know, what sort of objections will you get on a site? How do you get a planning application through? What are the nuances of that, and how do you deal with them? Well, you know, tips around that really is good communication. On a bigger site like this, if you're going in from scratch and there's no planning at all, this was a permitted development site, which means that you're under the PD rules for office to residential conversion. This allowed a quicker, easier conversion of the site in terms of planning process, a cut down version. You still have to do a number of reports, but it was a lot easier than a full planning application, which, you know, may or may not have been seen as favourably. So in terms of overcoming objections, it's important to try and get the council on board as soon as possible. If you do go through the full planning process, you want to get potentially a pre-app done, a pre-application. And that's usually a cut down application with less reports, but enough information to give the council an idea of exactly what you do want, and the reports to back up that show that it's a viable scheme. because you don't want it to fall down at pre-app stage. And a lot of people that do a pre-app will put in a very basic cover report with their architect on a set of floor plans. Well, that might be great in certain instances, but if it's not fully prepared, the pre-app response from the council saying, yes, we don't have a problem with it in principle, might sound great, but if you haven't, but they'll always caveat it in their response to you. But that's subject to a suitable highways report. That's subject to a suitable, incoming electricity supply, and we might not want a substation on this site. And so they do caveat it. So the more prepared you can be for a pre-app, the better. Sometimes you don't have the luxury of that. If we're going in for purchase and we want to do a quick pre-app before we exchange, well, you're not going to have the ability to get all these consultants in and do all that work. So you're going to have to understand that your pre-app response is going to be more flaky for your use, because it'll be caveated with all these kind of reports and due diligence that needs to be done. You've got to think of the council as effectively a tick box exercise. Even if they like the site in principle and they're on board with it in theory, they've got to tick all the boxes. They've got to make sure that the highways are safe, the bins are sorted, the turning facilities are correct for the site, for the bin lorry to come in and out. All these kind of considerations that will help them determine an application in your favour have got to be thought about. There's a huge amount of detail, tens and tens of consultants and information to put in that planning app. So, overcoming those objections is really about planning, preparation, in-depth analysis, getting the right team on your side. And that's really where all of this starts. Everyone in their property journey is out there learning, wanting to get into development, and you need to start with your education first and foremost. Pick all the low-hanging fruit of free books and ebooks and forums and all this kind of stuff, and then you need to get on your courses. But pick the right ones, pick who you work with very, very carefully, and then pick who you want to mentor with. I do mentoring, of course, but ultimately, choose your team correctly. And I've chosen my team over the last 20 years of doing property. Scaling up my business, I've worked through multiple different consultants to get to the team that I've got now, and that's a proven team through multiple different sizes of sites and locations. We've done well over 30 odd commercial conversions now of reasonable scale. So there's a lot to be said for the right consultants, and getting the right planning consultant on board is key to overcoming those objections from the council. Proper preparation in every area will help them overcome it, because the council go, oh, it's a concern. People have concerns. Oh, I'm worried about the I don't know, I keep using parking, but I'm worried about the parking not being enough, So they need a report from a highways, not highways agency, but a highways consultants firm that's a very well established, good names. Again, picking good firms. As you scale up your developments, you need to scale up the team to be a better branded, more respected consultant in their field. So we have some of the bigger, more expensive consultants working on bigger sites, because when the council see their reports come in, they take them more seriously than, say, a covering letter from your architect. And that's what it's all about. It's about going prepared to the council with the high level due diligence and reports that say this does work, we've done all this analysis, we've done all of this data, we've done a survey on site to manage and to monitor all the incoming traffic, these are the movements, and therefore this is why you should allow it. And that's key on these sites, that level of detail. And then the council go, oh, okay, that was a concern, but I've read your report and I see that it's not a concern. Great, tick. So that's what it's all about. The last thing I'd like to cover really is what could you expect from the planning process? Well, you can expect a lot of headaches, basically, whether it's a pre-app or whether it's a full application. It takes time. It takes a long time to get this stuff through, a lot of planning, and what that means is that on sites like this, we had to buy it, my client had to buy it on risk, because you can't get all the answers in your planning from day one. It's almost impossible. You've got to do that work. And it took us about 2 months to get all those reports done and to get things like the fenestration application, the landscaping. Well, it was more than that. I think the landscaping came last. That only went in more recently. That was like 6-9 months, because actually we didn't know what we wanted as well, and the site was evolving, and it's always the last thing you come out of the building and out on the landscape. And if you can see behind me, we've still got a load of flooring to be done. This whole car park is going to be tarmacked on this site, which is a huge expense, but it'll really tidy up the site and make it look brand new. So anyway, I hope that's been helpful today. Ultimately, it's about giving you some tips on the planning process, letting you know what to expect. It can be a very lengthy process, but if you have the right people in place as you scale up and you scale up your consultant team, you should be okay. You shouldn't get tripped up, but don't expect a quick turnaround for planning. That's the key. And as I said, it's all about patience and preparation. I'd like to hear what you guys are doing out there. Please let me know if you've got any planning headaches, what you're going through, what's your worst planning experience, what's your best planning experience, how quick have you got a planning application through. I'd love to hear the kind of range of results out there of what you guys have experienced and what you're working on. And please do like and subscribe to the channel, because we're here giving good content. Without you guys and without your feedback, we can't do better and give you more interesting content to watch and help you on your journeys. And of course, if you'd like to work with me at all, reach out using the details below this video, and I hope to see you on another video very soon.